Hi, my name's Fabian and I'm here to talk to you about education in Oklahoma. So if you've been online at all within the past few weeks, you might have seen this very popular TikTok video.
The Oklahoma governor just announced a new program for his public schools called Classroom to Careers.
Supposedly, students would have to either get accepted into a university, get into a trade or technical college, or face compulsory military enlistment to graduate. Here are a couple of snippets from the video that she's referring to.
Also, I'm always talking about classrooms to careers. I want every kid ready for a career, and so I'm thinking about even making it a requirement to graduate from Oklahoma high schools. You've got to either be accepted to college, or you have to be accepted into a career tech, or you have to be going into the Army. You have to have some kind of plan post-graduation to go get a great job. And we are made to work and be part of society.
Teresa's video attracted attention even across state lines. There was outrage, not just at Governor Stitt, but also at Teresa as well. Many said she was fear-mongering or lying, even those who didn't support Republicans like Governor Stitt. Critics of Teresa often said that Stitt was merely referring to House Bill 3278 or a plan to expand on it. Many said that from their understanding, House Bill 3278 was merely an expansion of options and pathways for students, allowing them to convert relevant work experience into credits and requiring extra classes to graduate. If we look at this graphic from Governor Stitt, it confirms what they say. He did indeed reform high school graduation requirements and push for career tech programs to be recognized as relevant work experience so that they could be converted into credits. Sometime later, a spokesman for Stitt clarified that he was not suggesting a mandate for military service. For many, that's all they needed to know, that Teresa was fear-mongering or lying, and that Governor Stitt was just trying to help people out, trying to help students out. But that wasn't the end of the story, at least not for me. Stitt's using a very popular maneuver amongst Republicans, which is using seemingly innocuous bills like House Bill 3278 as plausible deniability that he's looking out for us. In theory, extra requirements and more options seem great because the obvious conclusion would be that it's just more pathways and students would need to learn more in order to graduate, right? In reality, this will devastate student outcomes and college enrollment numbers across Oklahoma. House Bill 3278, while allowing students to pursue a career, will make it that much harder to leave that career, which could lead students into joining the military as a last resort, instead of allowing students to pursue what they deem best. HB 3278 is only one part of a larger attack on public education by Governor Stitt and others like him. This is the future of education in Oklahoma. All across HB 3278, you'll see that the new required courses end in the key phrase, approved for college admission requirements. You can see it here, here, and here. You'll also find the alternate pathway for graduation, which lets students graduate through relevant work experience, and it's known as the core curriculum. Unlike the new requirements for the traditional pathway, the core curriculum doesn't meet graduation requirements, according to the United States Department of Education. They say the core curriculum is a lesser credential, and they ordered Oklahoma to not count students graduating through core curriculum among the total number of graduates. The Oklahoma Department of Education didn't defend the core curriculum when they were questioned by the Oklahoma Voice whether it fulfilled college admission criteria or not. Instead, CareerTech Director Haken said that he's working to ensure that policies from all three agencies are aligned. What I really believe he is trying to accomplish is to hide that he knows that the core curriculum doesn't meet college admission criteria. I don't believe he'll advocate for more rigorous requirements for the core curriculum, but rather he'll try to bring the standards for the federal government down so that they can keep counting the core curriculum graduates and make it seem like the program is helping more than it really is. Essentially trying to convince the United States to dumb down their standards and make Oklahoma look better so that he can keep his job. And because graduates under the core curriculum program don't meet college admission criteria, they could be forced into a position where they either stay at the job that they have, even if they don't like it, or get a job that doesn't pay a living wage, or join the military for more opportunities. Haken says that core curriculum graduates aren't necessarily barred from attending higher education. Now, if I were him and I wanted to keep my job, what I would do is push for Oklahoma to still recognize core curriculum graduates and to dumb down standards for colleges in Oklahoma. so that students graduating under my program could still go to college. And if that happens, college graduates in Oklahoma most likely won't be able to compete with those from other states, making it that much harder to leave Oklahoma. Again, trying to make things seem optional while putting people into increasingly difficult situations where their options are limited. Now, why would they do this? Well, it's because Governor Stitt, and likely Haken as well, have an agenda to push and donors to please. Stitt pushed for an executive order to bring campaign donors for politicians into the light, but he keeps his own donors and supporters in the dark. You'll find that Stitt has received a large amount of private donations with no particular origin, or from his own office, and even a substantial amount from the energy and oil industry. That should be enough probable cause to doubt the good intentions this person said he had. So, of course, Stitt is pushing the CareerTech program. He has to keep the oil and energy industry populated with workers without other great options, which is what the core curriculum is doing, so that he can keep those donations flowing, to keep his power. If you don't believe me yet, you will soon enough. Examining further, we can see who else is trying to keep Stitt around and trying to keep Oklahomans under their control. In October of 2024, 2 extremely similar ads against 3 Oklahoma justices, calling them liberal, were aired on TV by dark money groups. Dark money refers to spending to influence elections, public policy, and political discourse where the source of the money is not disclosed to the public, so the name is fitting. According to News 4, one of the 2 groups, People for Opportunity, has close ties to the Oklahoma Council of Public Affairs, an advisory sponsor of the Heritage Foundation's Project 2025. They want to take public money and give handouts to private schools and eliminate Oklahoma's nonpartisan Judicial Nominating Commission. Instead, they want to give the governor power to install justices with Senate approval. There's supposed to be checks and balances between the branches of government, but they're working hard to erode those so that they can push their agenda without issue. The other group is known as 46 Action, which, as you can guess, has close ties to Governor Stitt. It was founded by former campaign donors and staffers of Governor Stitt. It's supposed to share its list of donors with the Oklahoma Ethics Commission, but 46 Action got around that. They created and used a single nonprofit donor known as 46 Forward. Now, because 46 Forward is an LLC and not a PAC, it's not required to share its list of donors, making it a dark money group. 46 Action also spent tens of thousands to elect several candidates that Governor Stitt publicly supported in the Republican Senate primary races last year. The same Senate that would approve any justice that Governor Stitt wanted to appoint if People for Opportunity had their way. They were successful in ousting one of the justices while the other 2 very narrowly kept their seats. Don't doubt that they won't work night and day to oust the other 2 to gain more power. Despite his background, many might say that requiring more classes to graduate can really only be a good thing. But I would argue the opposite. Oklahoma is ranked 49th in education by U.S. News and World Report. The data from Oklahoma's state report card on education shows that they have an alarmingly low graduation rate. English language learners and economically disadvantaged students seem to have the lowest rates, which goes to about as low as 70%. That's 3 in 10 students not graduating. The worst part of these stats is that the students graduating under the core curriculum are also included, the same program that the federal government already said doesn't meet college admission requirements. In reality, these numbers should be lower. They're inflating their numbers using a lesser credential to make themselves look better. So as you can see, students in Oklahoma are struggling, particularly those under the traditional pathway. Upping the requirements at this moment would make graduating under the traditional pathway harder. And when that happens, Governor Stitt and cronies like him, like Haken, can conveniently guide students into the CareerTech program, which Stitt's donors and agenda pushers would benefit from. Those students would then have a harder time getting accepted into higher education in other states, and whichever states in Oklahoma did accept them would likely not be able to compete with colleges from other states. This could put them into a position to stay in that career tech job that they got, accept a job that pays less, or join the military, like I said before. And as you saw in the data, this will affect English language learners, impoverished students, and students with disabilities the most. Unfortunately, that's not the end of these cronies' evils. They want to punish schools that are performing poorly in a state where Schools and students are on their last leg and begging for help. Governor Stitt approved 20 rules from State Superintendent of Education Ryan Walters, who's terrible in his own right. One rule would downgrade a school's accreditation status if more than half of its students aren't able to score at a basic performance level in reading and math tests, according to the Oklahoma Voice. Guess which districts this will affect? Yep, districts with English language learners, impoverished students, and students with disabilities. If a school loses its accreditation, it'll forcibly be shut down and students attending that school will be reassigned to other accredited schools. And the same concept would also apply to the districts. If you remember from the graphic that I showed you earlier, Governor Stitt passed a Universal School Choice Act. I've talked about that in my previous videos. Go watch those if you haven't already, but just as a quick refresher, universal school choice bills allow students to attend private school using taxpayer money. Sound familiar? It's exactly what people for opportunity wanted. So if public schools and districts are closed, then these kids will end up at private schools. Schools that don't have to abide by government rules. Schools that can push religion on children. There's even bipartisan concern, according to Bill Coleman, a Republican in Oklahoma. He says it sounds like something that isn't really for the benefit of the students. This isn't the only way these crooks are trying to downgrade the accreditation status of public schools and trying to push their beliefs onto kids. The Oklahoma Voice says other rules establish foundational values, including references to the Creator. And according to this Oklahoman article, the Bible is mentioned more than 40 times. Oklahoma is putting the Bible and historical impact of Christianity back into schools, Ryan Walters said. He even praised President Trump's education agenda. The thing is, Walters had a hand in shaping the standards that he now wants to change, which are regarded as some of the best in the nation already. He wants a new committee to develop social studies standards, headed by far-right conservatives such as the president of the Heritage Foundation. The Heritage Foundation wrote Project 2025, and if you don't know what it is already, I highly encourage you to research it, because it's very concerning. Only 3 of the 10 people have ever even lived in Oklahoma. They don't represent the average hardworking American. They'll do everything they can to push their religion on children while accusing the other side of doing exactly what they're doing. And if schools don't comply, they'll be punished with a downgrade of their accreditation status. This isn't the first time Walters has tried to push his religion on kids. In 2023, he threatened Tulsa Public Schools' accreditation status when a school board member known as Ashley was shouted over at a graduation during a prayer. She received an email from the Tulsa School Board president stating that there were numerous complaints and that her prayer was in violation of the Constitution. Her prayer went as follows: "I pray in the name of Jesus Christ that each one of you would walk forward from this moment in the excellence and love of God, that He would guide you, direct you, and draw you to your ultimate goal. In the name of Jesus." Ryan Walters believes that the Supreme Court was wrong in their Engel v. Vitale decision, which held that school-sponsored prayer is a violation of the First Amendment. Walters never specified which provisions of the state's accreditation standards were violated by Tulsa Public Schools. Believing the law is wrong does not absolve you of the consequences when violating it. He believes he's above the Constitution. Despite saying he would do the same for any faith or religion, requests from the crowd to allow a rabbi and imam to offer prayer were ignored. Another rule would implement Stitt's executive order banning state funds from applying to diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. Of course, schools' accreditation status will be in danger of being downgraded if they don't comply. This rule is similar to House Bill 1775, which Governor Stitt approved. House Bill 1775 was described as a prohibition on the idea that because of one's race or sex, that they're predetermined to be racist or sexist, respectively, by Republican Representative Kevin West. Tulsa World says West, who wrote House Bill 1775, acknowledged that racism still exists, but other Republicans dismissed it as largely the work of race baiters. Well, I didn't know we solved racism. I really hope this goes without saying, but if racism still exists, that means that there will be people who will try to gain, then abuse power that they have over people who they deem to be lesser than them based only on the color of their skin. That means we should be doing everything in our power to stop ourselves from falling into the same traps that our predecessors did. We should be educating ourselves on how racism still exists and how it's permeated our society and our nation. Regina Goodwin, a Democrat, said arguments against House Bill 1775 were not about past wrongs, but about systemic racism today. I don't know any teacher who's teaching children to hate other children or that they're somehow responsible for racism. Critical race theory is simply teaching racism is a part of the American fabric. Who in this room would disagree with that? She asked. The House parliamentarian ruled the vague language of House Bill 1775 violated rules, but Republicans didn't care. They suspended the rules and passed it anyway. House Bill 1775 was then used to downgrade the accreditation status of Tulsa Public Schools and Mustang Public Schools. CNN reported the downgrade for Tulsa Public Schools was in response to a complaint filed by a teacher who claimed she was required to watch training videos that, quote, shamed white people for past offenses and that all are implicitly racially biased by nature. But in the rebuttal, Tulsa Public Schools said they were about implicit bias and didn't indicate that white people were inherently racist. Tulsa World obtained a copy of the training videos in question. They say the audio that was deemed to violate HB 1775 was reading text word from word from a visual presentation. It included acknowledging that implicit biases can be uncomfortable, asking teachers to be aware of their backgrounds and how it affects their perceptions, asking teachers to review academic and behavioral data for gaps by race, socioeconomic status, and gender, and explaining the difference between fact and opinion while avoiding imposing personal values in the classroom. How dare they ask you to keep your opinion to yourself and to analyze data? Joking aside, I don't see it mentioning anything about shaming white people. And funny enough, neither did the State Board of Education. Without even hearing the recording in question for themselves, they took the word of that teacher and downgraded the accreditation status for Tulsa Public Schools for the so-called offensive training that said, because our culture has shifted from one predominantly designed around white middle-class systems to one that is much more multicultural, we can no longer assume every child will respond to the same strategies. That's right, as the world changes, we have to change with it. I guess the State Board of Education in Oklahoma must hate that. The State Department of Education Executive Director of Communications, Rob Kissinger, even admitted that this instance underscores how the vague language of HB 1775 invites imprecise judgment calls, which in turn can have a chilling effect on classroom instruction. What's worse is they already deemed the training session to not be in violation of HB 1775. Deborah Gist, the superintendent of Tulsa Public Schools, said, "It is clear the OSDE erred in this determination because from the beginning of the video to the end, the written language on the slides and the words heard in the audio are identical. Because the OSDE found that there was no violation of HB 1775 in the slides, it is factually impossible for the audio to be unlawful." That's right, they already ruled it wasn't in violation, so they just made crap up to find a violation because they wanted to push an agenda and because they didn't care. The message is clear. They want to keep us from speaking up about injustices in our system and will punish us if we do so, even violating their own rulings if it means that they get their way. Going back to CNN's article, a teacher for Mustang Public Schools had students participate in a cross-the-line activity. Cross-the-line activities originated from the anti-bullying space and were meant to develop the understanding that everyone has something that they deal with and to not bully or tease others, the district said. I still wanted to know what was in the activity, but before I get into that, I just want to disclose that I'll be giving my opinion based on the context that I have at hand right now. That's all I can really do, as I wasn't there after all. That doesn't mean I wouldn't keep an open mind if more information came to light. Moving on, the complaint against Mustang Public Schools came from a parent who said that the activity made their child feel guilty. In this activity, middle school students took one step forward if the teacher said a statement and the student felt that it applied to them. Thankfully, there's a video from a student who actually participated in the activity, which I'll play for you right now.
Essentially, like, if you feel like you could walk into a store and no one would think that you're about to steal.
I mean, sometimes people stare.
All right, here we go. 15, if walking alone at night, you never have to worry about anyone feeling threatened because of you.
Oh.
Guys, we should have our eyes closed. Let's just like.
Like, does that mean it's asking people?
Why are all these questions about like race?
Not all, but a lot of them.
And like,
Basically, like, if you were walking alone at night, would you like make someone feel threatened by your presence?
No.
Imagine a girl that you don't know, and you're wearing all black and it's night. Do you think that she would feel threatened by you?
Yes.
Then don't take so.
oh, so we need to do we? I do this if I feel like I'm okay, yeah, then we step forward. Okay.
All right, now all of these questions are going to be taken a step back.
Okay.
In the video, you can hear one student ask, "Why are all these questions about race?" Seems a bit outrageous, right? Why would a teacher have to ask these specific questions about race? For those who are upset after watching this video, let me ask you something. What if these questions had been about socioeconomic class instead of race? What if the teacher had asked students to step forward if they never had to worry about whether rent was going to be paid on time, or whether they were going to get to eat that day, or even if their parents were able to buy their phones whenever they wanted? Would you feel differently then? Take the time to really think about that. If your answer changed, it's probably because you had to worry about finances at some point in your life. You became one of the people that felt at a disadvantage, just as others in that room have surely felt before. If your answer changed, you've more than likely been tricked by those in power to feel mad at people who share in your hardships. Some people may even suffer more hardships than you. That doesn't make you a bad person though, it just means we all have different experiences in life. I support activities like this one because it bridges the gap, it makes us acknowledge our differences and hopefully start to empathize and understand each other. This is something that those at the top will try to stop at any cost. They want us to fight a culture war to distract us, because if we ever realize that what we should be fighting is a class war, then they could lose everything. If your answer didn't change, there likely isn't much more I can say or do to change your mind. You probably believe you're part of a privileged group, or that you'll somehow join one in the future. In that case, I hope you are, and that you do, because otherwise you'll suffer like the rest of us. But before you click off of this video angrily, let me say this. In that video, in neither of the two questions that the teacher asked, did he specify based on the color of your skin. Seriously, watch it again if you have to. It's telling that the student said, "Why are these questions about race?" That student knows that people of color have to deal with racial profiling, and immediately, when that teacher asked those two questions, race came to her mind. Both of those questions could have been about the way someone dresses, their posture, the way they walk, their facial features, and any other number of things. If you still think that those questions couldn't have been about race, you can look at the list for yourself. I'll link the questions in the description. Some were about socioeconomic class, some were about gender, and there were other topics as well. Specifically, you can hear the teacher ask questions 14 and 15. But anyway, the student specifically singled out race. So when racial profiling is something that so obviously happens that it's the first thing a student thinks of when asked those questions, why would the government try to silence anyone who's trying to speak up against discrimination? Why would there be an uproar about how white people are being shamed? It's because they want to pit us against each other. Let's be real, these students all attend the same middle school. They likely have more in common with each other than, say, children of billionaires. And yet the angry parent is falling for their swindle. It's because they believe they're privileged, and they don't want to deal with the uncomfortable feeling that maybe someone had it worse off than them. The thing is, the same way that that parent feels is the same way that the ultra-rich feel about her. I can already sense you asking, well, if that's how they feel about us, why don't they just ban talking about financial privilege in school? My answer to that is that there's no reason to. If that happened, there'd be too much attention on how the ultra-rich are trying to silence us, and that could put them at risk. Whatever we say doesn't affect them either. Why would they care about what we think when they have so much money that they'll face pretty much zero consequences for anything that they do? Believe it or not, this cross-the-line activity was apparently supposed to be voluntary. Mustang Public Schools still took down the activity immediately and said that they were in the wrong, and yet their accreditation was downgraded. These crooks were looking to punish in silence, not to help. Now, there is one other thing I want to address. The anonymous parent said a student came up to them afterwards and said, "I knew you'd be at the front of the line. This made my child feel even worse." Again, my opinion is based on the context that I have. Nothing more, nothing less. If this happened the way that they said it did, then I don't think that that comment was appropriate. No one should be made to feel bad for the privilege that they were born into, unless of course they're using that privilege to harm or silence others. Unfortunately, we only get one side of the story. For all we know, the student that was made to feel bad might have provoked the other one. Again, we don't know, but I don't believe that this means that the activity was inappropriate. Actually, I believe this could have been a life-changing moment, and shutting down the activity just put a bigger wedge in between these two students. What if the teacher had taken the time to speak to both students about why that comment was inappropriate? What if there was an open dialogue between the two of them? What if they got to know each other more? My point is, any potential for reconciliation was crushed when the activity got shut down and when Mustang Public Schools got punished. And that's exactly the way that those in power want to keep it. They allowed no discussion and didn't listen to pleas for a reevaluation of Tulsa Public Schools or Mustang Public Schools accreditation status. This is and most likely will be a recurring theme for these crooks. One teacher at another school, Talania Norfar, said she would remove real-world statistics in her class, which would include things like the rate of homicides against transgender people in fear of violating HB 1775. Yes, we're now at a point where we're too afraid to talk about real-world statistics and data. Another teacher said her predominantly African American students feel they're the ones being targeted by this law. They already know from their own experiences that life is uncomfortable. But how dare anyone speak up about what it's like to live as a minority in America? The state board doesn't care about facts. Kevin Stitt, Kevin West, Ryan Walters, and Brent Haken don't either. They don't care about reality, they don't care about minorities, they don't care about you, and they don't care about us. They have an agenda to push and power to take a hold of, and they won't let anything stand in their way. It all starts with public education. If we let public education fall, the rest of their job will be so easy. When everyone's too dumb or too deep into indoctrination to know any better, this country will fall into fascism. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Don't let anyone gaslight you into thinking that we're not headed there. When we ignore history, we're doomed to repeat it. Public schools and an educated population are the biggest danger to these crooks. Speak up now or let us fall into fascism. The choice is yours. Thank you for watching. Make sure to subscribe because I'll be doing a lot of work trying to call these people out. So for now, have a good day and I'll see you next time.